Hello, welcome to the next talk in the Mindful to Mindful talk series. I have the privilege and honor to welcome our next guest, who is Dr. Jyoti Mishra. Dr. Jyoti has been trained in cognitive and computational neurosciences, has expertise in how the brain understands or pays attention in learning and in brain psychiatry. She also has expertise in neuroimaging and performs clinical research around these areas as well. Now, what that means to me, at least, is that she is a brain scientist and a very accomplished one at that. She has co-authored, close to 40 peer-review published papers. She has multiple patents and copyrights in her name. She has written many chapters in books on the brain as well. And she's also an assistant professor of psychiatry in University of San Diego and the founder of NEAT Labs, where they perform research on the brain. So she's also happens to be one of the most humblest, people we have met as well. So talking to her would be is Sadhvi Vrinda Om, a poet, an author, as well as one of the foremost disciples of Swami. And Sadhvi ji, as we call her fondly, will try to pick the brains of Dr. Jyoti to help us understand how the brain functions, and more importantly, how can meditation affect the brain. You don't want to miss this one. Thank you very much for joining.
Dr. Jyoti, welcome to this session of Mindful to Mindful. And it's really an honor to have you. I know when we have these kind of sessions, you tend to say that it's a pleasure and it's an honor, but it's really an honor. And I say that because I have never in my entire life ever had the opportunity to speak to somebody as brilliant as you. So a brain scientist and from California. And like I said, when I saw your resume, I was like, it was like a mini manuscript, and I was totally floored. And for the first time in life, I had like a lot of palpitations. What am I really going to ask you? So you come from a world of science, and I, being a sannyasi, I was thinking that there is really not much of a difference between science and spirituality in a way. Maybe their approach is different. But in the life of a sincere seeker or a meditator, much of our time is spent in taming the mind, trying to settle it, to calm it, to focus it inward. And so much of your research and study has gone into that. So while we are struggling, trying to figure out things as the time we get better at what we're doing, you with your scientific research and all the statistical data have achieved so much already. So I just would like to hear all the great things that you've accomplished in this field. So I'm thinking I'm going to begin with the most basic question, which is why meditate, especially in this ultra busy world where there's so much vying for our attention. Even if you're asking somebody to take out 5 minutes, it's a big thing. It appears a big thing to them, especially when the mind doesn't settle down. So if you could just tell us something like that.
So first of all, Sadhvi ji, it's a pleasure to be here. I admire your background and also your will and your ability to take on sannyas as a new spiritual journey in your life, and having your brain go through that adventure. And we all choose different paths, and for me the path was to study the brain, and I was lucky that I was able to do that and continue to do that. So coming, first of all, I also mention that when we think about research, my father says we are researching, meaning again, and searching for things that we already know in some ways. And so in that way, I do see the connection between science and spirituality. With spirituality, we know these things which you're understanding as a sannyasi, as many expert meditators have realized. Science is trying to bring more rigor, more nicely statistically designed paradigms to that kind of practice, and figuring out what part of meditation is helpful versus there are parts that could not be helpful, or what does it do for us. And that's where your question about why is meditation important and interesting come about. So in some ways, you just the way, to me, the way we think about starting our day with the very basics, like I'm just gonna brush my teeth to prepare my teeth to get the germs out, right? And prepare my palate for the food I will eat. Meditation is like preparing the brain for the many encounters the brain will have today. And to me, meditation and mindfulness, as one goes through the practice, is really, it's developing this ability for focus, single-minded focus, so that you can really in a crystal clear way, whatever is in front of you, you pay full attention to it, and you clear out all the distractions. And we know that the world we live in, this digital world, the phone is going, there's social media, there's, all the distractions, they are even above our heads, right? And so, and we're so connected that, I am doing so and so things, and what are other people doing, and how does that affect me? And all of these different thoughts can flow through our minds when we are trying to achieve what we want to achieve. So it's about the mindset that meditation helps us with. Is this practice helps us develop that mindset for the day, for the week. And I would say even beyond that simple mindset, it also helps to go beyond and be present in our interactions with others. So how do you feel what the other person's feeling, which is empathy? How do you see their point of view? And in case there is suffering, how do you help with that suffering? So that's compassion. And those are parts of meditation as well. And excuse me. So in our daily lives, we're not living alone. Our lives are a constant interaction with other people. And having, in this world, productivity matters a lot, right? That we are doing well on our jobs. We have good relationships with our peers at work, our bosses, when we come home, good relationships with our family members. And in that mindset, I think meditation helps to set that mindset. Because imagine you have a conflict at work or at home. How much time then goes in that conflict? If you think about it, in this world where we think about productivity so much, I have to be, and though I do not completely believe in this individualistic mindset, people do believe that I have to be on top of my game. It's such a high pressure world. Even if you take it from that dimension, I strongly believe that mindfulness and meditation can help you achieve that.
Your response has really made me think of something. So, it's such a beautiful analogy that you gave, that you have to prepare your mind for the day. And it's something I personally experience as well, that my day begins, with my puja and my japa and everything. So meditating for an hour. Most people do manage to put in 20-25 minutes or more. So what happens is, mostly all goes well with the meditation and everything, but what people experience is that 1 hour or an hour after that, the mind is able to remain in that state. But the moment you start moving into the world and the conflict that you spoke about, things tend to take a very different turn. So all that mindfulness and calm that you developed during that time is a bit lost. And so that attention, it just wanders. So how does a brain process attention, and how can we better focus it and retain what we have, work towards in the morning to experience it throughout the day or the week?
Yes. As you know, the brain is the most fascinating organ that we have. And when, in the field of the brain sciences, especially the cognitive brain sciences, which is how do we, go about our daily activities, of which attention is the most fundamental core of any cognitive process. When we start to understand brain networks, there are networks in the brain that are active. So there are networks that help us, that are in the frontal part of the brain, and also out here, the parietal part of the brain, that are helpful to us to focus on what is relevant to our goals at that given moment. It could be any part of work that we have, any interaction that we're trying to do. That information is coming to us from our senses. It's coming from our ears, from our eyes, to the sensory part of the brain. And all of this information is flowing like little waves, literally. And these frontal parietal control areas are helping us amplify the information that is most important. The wave that is most relevant to the task that we want to do becomes a bigger wave and goes into further processing. At the same time, there are other networks in the brain, and they are called the default mode network. Now, the default mode network is actually, very well developed. It's actually the most energy consuming part of the brain. And it's the part that takes away from, for us to concentrate on something. It's the part that's actually evolved to help us think about the past, think about the future. And so that's why it's evolutionarily there for us, because as human beings, we're always thinking about our plans that we want to do based on whatever has happened in the past. But at the same, so in that context, the default mode network is important. But this part of the brain is also the part of the brain that is involved in wandering of the mind. And so while your control parts of the brain are trying, amongst the many waves that are flowing in the sensory parts, the control parts of the brain are trying to amplify that wave. Other waves can get amplified because this default mode network is working on them. So attention in the brain is really this push and pull at every moment. It's a seesaw. It's a push and pull between these networks and systems. And when the control part wins is when we're able to pay attention. So that's how the brain really processes information.
This is excellent, because default mode is actually ruining the lives of a lot of people. It's just always working. And most people, that's why experience, especially a lot of people come to the ashram to seek our guru's blessings and everything. And they want to meditate, they want to lead better, less stressful lives and everything. And everyone's always experiencing this tug of war, they're always battling. So I think this exploration, because I've always seen that if we know what's going on inside of us, it helps the brain the next time it experiences something like that, you're able to say, okay, that's my default mode on, because if you know the science behind it, it really helps. Thank you so much. This is great. So
yes, if I can add something really small to that, is that one would wonder that, oh, if default mode is all bad and it's taking us away from what we want to do, why is it evolving with us as humans, and why has it become such a big part of our brain that we're always trying to suppress? So it happens that, yes, when you want to pay attention to something and regulate other things, then default mode activity can be bad in a sense. But in other contexts, like I said, it also is the part of the brain that can help us think about our future, how we relate to our goals relative to the past. And so it does things that are important for us as human beings. And actually, when one experiences, say, concentrated meditation, and when we think about focusing on the breath, what our work finds is that default mode activity, when you're really in that concentration, is actually higher, which means it's not distracted, but it's involved in focusing on the breath. So it's contextual a little bit, in that you could be, in the moments that you're deep in meditation, you're not distracted. You are constantly in this internal monitoring mode. Like, I can monitor my breath, my distractions are away. So the default mode even represents that, information that is also represented there. So, and then the last thing I'll mention is that, when we think about, this is going a little further, but aspects like creativity, aspects like that is things that that you want to focus on. But creativity comes from assimilating information from other aspects of the world, right? When you create a new thing, you are you have a goal. Say you want to create a new machine or something. You have a goal. You don't have a rule book, so you have to figure out what your mind will tell you from many different things you might have read or heard or will try. So the default mode network in that case helps you bring in these thoughts in a productive way and works in harmony with the control part of your brain to give you creative output. So for our brains, the concept is the context is really important. And but it's true that when we want to understand attention simplistically, the process, and at that moment in time, then attention to a task on hand, high default mode activity would be considered not so good. But it can have good and bad.
So how do we integrate? Because what it tells me that meditation gives us a certain power over the mind. It's no longer if I want to access my control mode or my default mode, or I would want them to be integrated, want them to work together. So this integration is possible through meditation, right? Like, I am in better control, because mindfulness would also come from better control over my. So if you could just shed a little light on that.
Yes, absolutely. For us as scientists, the way we study these aspects is to see if we can train individuals who have, say, who have not experienced meditation before. Of course, the people in the field also study expert meditators, but the work that I have led in the past has been with young adults and also teens who had not done any kind of meditation before. And in these designs, we are constantly also comparing how does meditation help versus another activity that might be good for them. So it's always what we call a controlled design. There's meditation versus something else as a comparison. And before and after they have completed a certain set of meditation sessions, we will monitor how the brain changes. And in these recordings of the brain, we actually see that the strengths of the connections in the brain that are in the control areas of the brain, they become stronger. And that is part of the evidence for us to say that, yes, meditation can help with these processes, with these actual objective brain processes changing over time. What we also find is that the extent of improvement that a person has in these brain connections, the stronger they get, the more attentive they are also. So it's not a, just a side phenomena. These things are going hand in hand. The improvements in attention, the improvements in productivity that we're seeing in people who undergo meditation are go hand in hand with the improvements in the strength of the connections of the brain regions that are important for control. And this even happens if you've had parts of your life where these connections have been very poor. So, for example, in one of our studies, we worked with actually children who had had a neglected childhood, and where they were actually living in a foster home. And so we all know that as children, we need good parenting. We need that our parents are there for us to nourish us in our minds and our bodies and all of that, right? So, but unfortunately, these children did not have that kind of an upbringing. But when we met them, they were stable in a foster home. They'd lived in a foster home for a few years. And when we undertook the work in collaboration with the foster home, we found that before they went into meditation, the brain circuits in these children are actually weaker than normal children who live with their biological parents. And because of the suffering that has happened in their early lives. But the meditation component, the training itself, can uplift the brain circuits to that of a normal child and even beyond. And that's, to me, is just very fascinating about the power of our brains to change.
So what has always held your fascination? You've been working with the brain for such a long time, more than over 18 years now. So what are the aspects of the brain? One is that it can change, but we would like to see what do you think? And what has been your personal experience, if I may ask you a personal question, that, it so happens that I'm a writer. I write, and I have written a few books. And what happens is when we write, people read the books and they're very impressed. Oh my God, they've got it all together. But the truth is that everyone's learning, that you have these realizations and this wisdom, but it's an ongoing journey. And you are struggling like everybody else. My point is that that you're working in the brain and all these studies and research. How much has that helped you in being able to get your emotions and other aspects of your life together?
Yes, of course. For me, I was enamored with how the brain works from an early age. And when I was studying in India, I really got very interested in the concept of how our brain codes for thoughts. We don't exactly know all of it, but I talked about a few networks, and we look at brain activity every day, and we figure out how these signals that we receive, how they make sense in one theory or another. And that's the privilege of the work that I do. I love to do that kind of work. And until I got to wanting to, before I got to do that, there was just the desire to do that. And it was a very, focused desire. This is what I want to do. And when I had the opportunity to come for graduate school, and I was admitted to a school in the United States, which was really a dream come true at that time, 18 years ago, I was like, yes, this is going to be, so amazing, because I'm going to study the brain, what I wanted to study for a long period of time. And when I come here with a lot of excitement and a lot of energy. But I find myself in a new environment completely, an environment where literally I can't decipher half the words people are saying because they speak so fast. Nobody, talks or walks or eats the food that we eat in India. And I come here with one suitcase, and we're supposed to figure it all out. And so my first year was really a year in crisis, and not being able to identify with peers who came from very different backgrounds, sometimes more quantitative and engineering backgrounds than I was from, and reminding myself, yes, I'm meant to be here, but it was a period where there were a lot of self-doubt, when you feel depressed, that do I really belong here? Is this what I'm meant to do? Is this, is this all worth it? And I am so far away from my family, and I must excel. So the pressures to excel, but at the same time, I am distracted by everything else but the thing I want to do, right? So it was exactly at that, I suffered in that mode for probably lost for, almost 6 months or so before I found the power of breath meditation. And to me, that's how my journey in personal meditation started. How much, concentrating on the breath is such a simple signal. It's nothing fancy as a signal. It's the signal is with me all the time, any part of the day. I take it with me everywhere. And if I want that, if my mind is faltering, I can go back to the breath. And I spent some time, in that practice. When you're immersed in the practice, of course, I was also a student at that time, so I could not give it my full-time attention, but many hours of the day. And within 2 to 3 weeks of being immersed in that practice for in what I would call an intense period of time as a full-time student, 3-4 hours a day of just doing this, it started to become part of my life, that even if I decreased the time that I spent in it, every time my mind would waver into a thought that was really not helpful, I would say, okay, where is my breath? And let me breathe in and breathe out, and breathe in and breathe out. Because what it's helping me to do is the unproductive thoughts. It's helping me to, recognize it immediately, as opposed to going in this roller coaster and suddenly, an hour later, I'm still in some random thought cycle, right? And it happened, I'm not a meditation practitioner who intensely practiced, but the mindset of meditation with, even a few minutes a day. Sometimes I'm sweeping the floor and meditating. Sometimes I'm washing the dishes and meditating. I'm, sometimes I've dropped my child to her daycare and walking back and meditating. It's like I find the time, but at other times there have been periods when life takes me to wanting new challenge. When you want to do something interesting in life, right? You say, well, say, for example, it happened to me also. I was in a job for a long period of time, and I had reached a point of a plateau. This was after my doctoral training, and I felt I really should move on and do something on my own. And it will be new, it'll be challenging because of the uncertainties of starting new things. I am actually at that time I was in a comfortable position. I had a salary, I was doing what I do, I did it well, but I wasn't feeling challenged in a way that, I didn't have the energy to the curiosity was going away because I was doing the same thing over and over. But there is this fear of going into the unknown, right? I'm sure you will relate to that from when you started your journey, and I hope to get to read or learn more about that at some point. And at that point, again, I went through periods of intense meditation, because to me, I think that my mother used to say, still says, as a human being, you want to experience everything in life. You should not, when you're older, don't let, you should not be saying, oh, I regret not doing this or not having that experience, So in that sense, new experiences are hard. Going on the roller coaster is hard. Doing these things can be hard, but if you settle the mind and go and say, okay, I will do this, then you can process the distractions better. And at many points in time, meditation has helped me with that. And because I took on these new stages, now I'm able to study meditation, and also, how can we deliver it to individuals in brief periods of time? How helpful is that? What areas of the brain are active? What if we, also found ways to, not just record those parts of the brain, but also there are methods in neuroscience where you can stimulate those parts of the brain. Like you can literally put electrical energy or magnetic energy into that part of the brain and say, okay, let me excite that part of the brain. And while we're doing that, what if we did that with meditation? Would you meditate better? Would you meditate faster? All of these questions I'm able to ask only because I took the, meditation itself helped me to have the courage to change parts of my career to become more independent and be able to ask these questions.
Thank you so very much, because hearing your personal journey is very inspiring, because most people think that successful people are just successful because, not that they had it easy, but they worked very hard, or they had a brain that was always just, a lot of things went very right for them. But a lot of people, especially during the pandemic, are just sitting at home, waiting for things to change, waiting for the world to open up, things to go back to normal. But just this little simple thing that you've said, that just go back to your breath and how it helped you. I think that this section, when a lot of people will hear, they will be inspired to do just that.